On this week's episode of Three Dad Bods,
a lot of Christian culture has traditionally taught us that life is a courtroom, but guess what? It never was, and that's just the culture. That's not the gospel. The gospel of Christianity teaches that life is a classroom and always has been.
Sarcastic, witty, and not afraid to mix it up. Pop open a cold one and welcome to Three Dad Bods.
I actually got to the heaven space. I had to, just to get there though, I had to take my perfect Christian teachings and I had to learn a lot more and add a lot more. And here's what it is. People kind of take my experience and they're like, that's gospel, that's this, that's that. And I'm like, nope, that was my gospel. That was what I had to learn to add to what I learned so that I could get to where I needed to go in heaven. Now, if I didn't have the target or the goal to go where I was going, I may have needed to learn a bunch of different things. But I had the goal that I wanted to go to what they call home, which is like the entry level of heaven. And there's a lot of different levels. There's 11 levels of heaven. And heaven itself is in a much, much higher dimension than where we exist. And to my perception, I would call it the 11th dimension. And so as you get to the 11th dimension, there's 11 levels. And if you get to the very, very, very core of existence, the very core of what all of this is, you're getting to the 11th level of the 11th level. And that's where God is. That's where Creator is. And to me, that's one of the reasons why 1111 is the God number for many people, is because it describes our map to get home, to get back to our Creator. Yeah.
Now, Vinney, I got a question here. This is one that really struck me, being LDS, growing up LDS. I was always taught that this life is a test. You get one shot. That's it. If you don't pass the test, you don't get the highest grade. You don't get the highest heaven. Okay?
That almost sounds like an Eminem song. You got one shot to make it.
If you look at, yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You don't believe that anymore, Carl?
Christianity, too, it's kind of based on the same principle. If you don't make it, you're going to hell, hellfire damnation, and it kind of sucks for you. And we're each born in different circumstances with different talents and parents and socioeconomic environments.
Carl
It
was
seems
rich.
damn unfair to me that someone born in Calcutta who never hears about Jesus, who never hears about the modern world, and I think maybe their experience here in this world should be judged a little differently than my experience in this world. And is it a judgment or is it more a lab? And that's what I kind of got from your book.
So here's I'll give you a perfect explanation to all this. And it's going to be a little long, but I'm going for it, okay?
Go for it.
You take 9 blind men, you put them in a room with an elephant, and you get them describing what an elephant is by what they felt with their hands, okay? You will get 9 completely different descriptions of what an elephant is, right? And one is going to say an elephant is this thick leg with a soft pad under it. Another is going to say an elephant is this flexible trunk that can grab stuff and suck up water and blow air through it. Another one's saying, no, an elephant is this big flappy ear that keeps flapping around and it adjusts and it helps cool the elephant off. And another one's like, what are you talking about? An elephant is this stringy tail and it smells like crap and it's always whipping you in the face. And all of these guys are right, but are all of them exactly right? No. For you to know what the elephant is, you have to gather all the descriptions. And even then, if you gather all the descriptions, do you know what an elephant is? No. You have a good idea. But how do you get to know what an elephant is? Go find the damn elephant. That's how you get to know what an elephant is. And religion is all these blind men's descriptions of God. How do you get to know God? Go find God. We have a holy temple, holier than any temple in the whole world, right here. And that's why these are called temples. And God exists there stronger than you can ever find outside yourself. But we get so distracted trying to find our answers right here. We get so distracted with these, we forget that the answers are already here if we look, if we ask, if we dive in to our own intuition, to our own universe inside of us, the you inverse that we have within us. But that is to answer you. And I think that, a lot of Christian culture has traditionally taught us that life is a courtroom. But guess what? It never was. And that's just the culture. That's not the gospel. The gospel of Christianity teaches that life is a classroom and always has been. And it's never been a courtroom.
Amen, man. I like that.
And here's the thing. We take the scripture of God sorting the wheat and the tares, but he didn't say burning up the tares. He's just sorting them out. And I know that as a human parent, I have 2 kids, and that's just 2 kids. And being a human parent, there's no amount of mistakes or misbeliefs that my kids could take on that would allow me to be okay throwing one of them away. I would never do it. To my dying day, I will love them and do everything I can to help them. And that's the love of a human parent. And you compound that by the love that God has for us, our Creator. I know for a fact our Creator doesn't throw any of us away. He just sorts us out. Some of us are socket wrenches. Some of us are Allen wrenches.
Alan, I've always I've always used the analogy of religion is like music. Some people like country, some people like rock, some people like classical, some people like jazz. It's what makes you feel good yourself, or maybe you feel good hearing different things at different times, but it's all music. It all has the same beats. It has instruments. It has a feeling that it gives you. And there's not one right music, rock and roll is not king of everything. Some people like country. They hate rock and roll. And that's okay. That's fine. You brought up, you brought up the word human parent. And so this is a deep, deep question because I like to ask them deep, deep thinking questions. But when you were during those 3 days of just doing what you were doing up there, did you have a feeling that there was something besides us? Were there other planets? Was there?
I'll go there.
Are you talking about aliens?
No, not aliens. Other beings. Are there beings? Did you have that feeling? Oh my God, that's a legit question.
Okay.
Here's what's really, here's what's interesting, Brent, is there's life throughout the universe. Life permeates the universe at every dimension. It does. So not only do we have, we're experiencing 3rd, 4th, and 5th dimensional existence right now in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And there is sixth dimension, 7th dimension, 8th dimension, 9th, 10th, all the way to the 11th. And the 11th dimension is angel type figures, like actual workers in heaven who help and act as messengers to us. And there is creation all along the way. The reason why so many of them focus on us, though, is because we are the experiment. We are a gathering of all the consciousness, all the DNA from all the different dimensions, and it's put into one batch of chocolate chip humans. We are the chocolate chip cookie mix of all of the universe. And that's why there's so much interest. And that's also an explanation that we're one of the only animals or mammals out there that goes through so many different phases in our growth into human. From embryo into fertilized egg, or to sperm into fertilized egg. That whole process, you see us go through all these different stages that no other mammal and no other reptile, no other fish or bird ever goes through. It's only us. And it's almost like you're doing a little snapshot of all these different, and you're gathering it together. That's why it's so important. What's going on here is we're the test. We're the test to see if the whole universe could get together in the same dimension and be okay.
So
okay. Go ahead, Sean.
I was just gonna. So, in relation to other people who have passed away before we, so we still exist. Is there some a connection to people from your life that you make after you make this transition?
Absolutely. Yeah. Here's what's really neat is once you transition yourself, you're essentially given carte blanche to do whatever you want to do with your time, even though time doesn't exist. But your energy is the most important.
Your existence.
You get to do whatever you want with your existence. You have helpers and guides to say, okay, here's what would be next if you wanted to go down this path. Here's what would be next if you want to go down this path. But what most people opt to do is if they really love their family, they go and start working as a guide or as a protector or as an influencer from the spiritual side, trying to influence their loved ones or protect their loved ones. So, anywhere you go, you've got teams of spirits around you, teams. And I don't mean just like one or two, I mean minimum 10. Everywhere you go, you've got a lot of spirits around you. Everybody does. Once in a while, you get near somebody and it's like a spirit party over there. They've got just like 100 souls around them. And
it's kind of creepy though.
It is kind of, it's creepy. When I first started realizing this, my brain went straight to, are they around me when I'm going to the bathroom? Are they around me when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that? But here's the funny thing.
That's my first thought. Who's there when I'm taking my showers?
Who's there? Who's there with my...
Nobody is, Sean. Nobody.
I know you wish you were.
When you're in this state that you are in when you cross over, you lose your ego. You lose this sense of judging each other. And so to watch, they're not going to be all hugging in on you for taking a shower, but they're going to be surrounding you in protection so that you maintain your protections. And they're not going to be jumping right in there, but they're going to be around. Also, in your moments of intimacy, it's the same thing. They're going to be around to protect. They're not crudes though. They're not trying to see something. Because to them, there's no privacy. You don't even have privacy to your thoughts over there. Because if you think it's out loud. Everywhere you go, it's out loud.
So there's no spiritual YouTube
trouble.
Where Brent's getting it on with his neighbor.
Yeah,
everybody
can see it.
Everybody. Remember, I'm walking around naked out there. I'm going butt naked. My thoughts.
That's what I was afraid of when Vinney said you'll appear in your natural state. I was like, oh no.
Can I just create a shower tent around him?
Knowing what Brent is saying, can I choose to go to hell? Because if he's going to be naked, I don't want to. That's already hell, so I might as well,
Yeah, might as well go there.
I don't want to go there. Okay, so if I may go back just a little bit, be serious again. So the reason I asked that specific question is because the three of us dad bods, we recently had a friend pass away, friend who is very dear to us that we love, very, very much. One of the things that we have talked about and wondered is what is his existence? What has been his experience when he passed away a few months ago, or even further back. Brent and I had a really odd experience where one of our friends died, and he and I at the same moment felt something bad happened to this friend. We had the same experience at the same time, and part of
1,600 miles apart,
1,600 miles away from each other.
Yeah,
it's so unexplainable. The only thing that I could ever think of was that our friend Mark, for some reason, decided to allow his presence to be felt by Brent and I, and I don't know.
Yeah,
can you explain those kind of things?
I can. So with that one particular, the friend not only communicated it directly to both of you. But what you don't realize is before you even came to this life, you had a contract with each other, all of you guys. And so in that contract, you signed the contract knowing that his exit date, you both did, and all of a sudden that date came and you had like a remembrance. That's right. That's the day. That was the moment he was supposed to cross. And it happened for both of you at the same time as he was sending loving energy to both of you that, hey guys, notice that we have this connection, that even as I'm crossing, you're feeling me cross. So you know that this connection goes way beyond words, way beyond, this world even. But, we are all part of this quantum net. It's a net of energy and love. All of us, every single one of us is a fiber of string, a string fiber on this quilt or this quilt of quantumness. And in that, we interlock and we interweave in and out of each other's lives. But what we don't realize is just because we had a couple of interchanges over here where we really connected to someone, it doesn't mean that that's it. It could be that they're a major part of our life later, even while we're here, or a major part of our life that we didn't even see from before we were here and from after we're leaving here. So they were a major player before we came here, and they're going to be a major player after we all leave too. So it's a beautiful thing. There's a lot less of us than you think. So if you go and look at how many souls are actually playing this game of Earth School, there's a lot less of them than you would think. You would think there was just zillions of souls, but there's not. It's just we're allowed to play a lot. And so in that essence of being allowed to play a lot, some of us are coming down and we're simulcasting. We're in different experiences at different dimensions at the same time. And quantum physics is just tapping into that principle right now, where they are seeing that, your dreams are kind of windows to the alternate realities. And there's just a lot more to our story we're not allowed to know yet. But that time is coming where full understanding will come.
You bring up a good point there. And I was just thinking of the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations. You talk about in the book, and this Drake that is your spiritual guide, he proceeds to go with you on this journey, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things you talk a lot about is increasing your vibration rate. In other words, raising your frequency.
Yep.
Why is that important? And what did Drake really talk to you? I mean, kind of give us a brief outline of those 10 suggestions in which we can work on our vibration here in this life.
So, if you start playing a tone and you play the exact right tone of frequency and you put it near a piece of glass that is that same frequency, it will move that piece of glass so much that it shatters it. And it doesn't shatter it because the tone is loud. It can be a very minute tone and it can be really muted, but it will shatter that glass because as it matches the frequency of the glass, they will start syncopating. They will start synchronizing so much. But here's the weird thing. Until that tone matches the glass does nothing. And heaven would be the glass. We are the one trying to match the tone. So for us to even enter the heaven space, we have to accelerate our frequency to so much higher than we can even get here. If I brought a blade of grass just from heaven and brought it to earth, down to Earth School itself would explode because of such a high amount of energy just in the single blade of grass. And in fact, there's probably more energy in a single blade of grass than our entire galaxy here. It's such a different place. And so for me to get there, I had to clear out the plumbing. There was some misconceptions, some misunderstandings that I had from my own Christian upbringing. And I had to clear that out, clean those drains, and get to where I was flowing properly. And then I could flower into or blossom into what I needed to become to get into heaven. I had to match that loving frequency. And it is so much higher than us. Now, here's what's weird. Sometimes our worst days become our best days. Sometimes our best days become our worst days here on earth. But the difference is our thoughts. How we tell our story in our own mind, how we think about our story. That is what changes everything. And that's our key. That's our key into heaven, is recognizing that it's our thoughts that start to choose whether we go up the frequency scale or down the frequency scale, whether we turn this horrible day into the best day of my life, or whether we turn the best day of my life into this horrible day. It's all our thoughts, and our thoughts are our keys. That's our keys to get into heaven, is it starts with our thoughts.
So you mentioned that you kind of help facilitate now, currently,
Yes.
spirits to be able to move on and stuff. And so, question that I have, and I think I already know the answer to this, but it seems like in these days, religion becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, do you think that you almost had a calling? What you had was a calling to help, because I imagine there's other people that do what you do,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
help facilitate those spirits, that maybe they need like so much help because there's so many people that don't believe,
Yeah.
their whole, the way the world flows and pushes them in another direction, that we need Vinnies here to help bring people to where they are going to.
Yeah. Well, 1 out of every 10 people you know has had either a spiritually transformative experience, a near-death experience, or an after-death experience. So 10% of Americans have had some type of experience like this. And to me, the reason why heaven keeps spitting so many of them back out is so that heaven has its own PR department, that we're down here working as public relations for heaven, because religions have manipulated the truth so much. They have taken what's absolute truth and decided, you know what? I don't like this absolute truth. I'm going to manipulate it through fear and leverage so that people do what I tell them to do. And so they donate their money to me, right? And so that's what they're doing to try to leverage people into these situations of following blindly the wrong thing. And heaven doesn't want that. Heaven wants the absolute truth. Heaven wants unconditional truth to be here. And here's what's funny. All these truths were already in me. I just needed help to uncover them and remember them. That was it.
Well, there's some religions, we won't specifically mention who, you have to pay to play.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you literally have to pay to play at the highest level, which to me, I mean, it seems so wrong if this is what you say, a classroom, a way to, get back with our maker. So, yeah, thanks for saying
the flaws of man. There's only one gospel. There's men that influence it and spread it all over the crap. It's gone on for eons and centuries. Profitability and power.
Well, what's neat though is when you study Buddhism, when you study Islam, when you study Judaism, you study Christianity, they all have this story of some type of God character that's going to come to earth and is going to help save us. But here's the part they all get wrong, is this God character is not like a superhero and is going to show up with a cape and in a chariot of fire. That this God character is going to show up inside of me and you and you and you first. And as this God character shows up inside us, I call that God, like, to me, I call it the Christ. Like the anointing shows up in us first. And as it shows up in us first, we start resonating to that higher love energy on earth. And then earth becomes a place where that energy can actually come and exist without making us explode.
Now, you said something really profound in your book that really hit me on my drive. In fact, I even looked in the rearview mirror just to look at myself, because at the very end of your book, you were talking about that each one of us has God within us, that because God created everything, and you are very, very, I don't know. I mean, you made no doubt when you were telling this in the book that God is the author of everything, the rocks, the leaves, the grass,
everything.
I mean, that was just an amazing point. And I think that's the only time where I've felt vibrations where I had a experience in my life where I'd gone a direction that I probably didn't need to go. And it really affected my family and those that care about me. And the one thing that this religious mentor told me was that God loves you. And that was, man, you could just feel it. It was just like overwhelming. I call it the electrical and the calm, the peace, the love that you felt in the room at that moment. And you sometimes want to question it and doubt it, but it's real.
It is real.
And I felt that again, looking in the mirror and listening to your book. I mean, I really thank you for that. That's something was really nice hearing that. So,
well, it's one of those things that it's inside of all of us to know that our Creator is in all things in this universe. We can connect to the Creator in our animals, our the other animals like us humans. We can connect to our Creator in the stream, the mountains, the trees. But what's really amazing about all of this is, as you look at all these people that have had near-death experiences, there's been countless thousands of atheists that come back as believers. There's no instances I've ever found of anyone who has actually died or had the near-death experience and come back as an atheist. Now I know one guy that had dabbled in drugs, but he didn't have a near-death experience. He had a delusion or hallucinogenic. But I'll tell you, I would say 99% of us who have had a near-death experience come back knowing, and not just saying, but knowing there's a God, and this Creator is far greater and bigger than we could comprehend. And to almost call it a man is to completely downgrade God, because God is so much more than what a man or a woman or anything in this world could be. It's so much bigger than that. And that's our Creator. There's no doubt there is a Creator. The question is how well do you know the Creator? And the best way to start is start looking within. That's where we get access.
Now, you brought up something that I'll admit I've struggled with. And, in the news right now, we have the situation in Gaza in Israel, St. Louis. Okay. I think it's on both sides, where we come from different cultures, different environments, different experiences. And we learn through cultural programming to dislike or hate.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me a little bit about what you learned from Drake and how you realized that even though you didn't feel like you were that way, but give us some examples of what we can apply in our life to make it so that
I was essentially taught, for me, I needed 10 really important principles taught to me for me to get to heaven. And it's almost like each principle represented a dimension. It really did. That's what it felt like to me. One of those principles was to release all prejudice. And, this principle came up, and the way Drake showed it to me is he said, you need to learn to love everyone and release all prejudice. And I was raised in a biracial family with, I'm a Caucasian. I have a little sliver of Cherokee in me. I had two sisters that were adopted Korean, and I love those sisters as much, if not a little bit more, than my blood brother and sister. Sorry, Tasha and Tyler, but it's true. But growing up, I just had a stronger connection with my Korean sisters than I kind of did with my blood siblings. Now, that was just how I grew up, so I felt that I was probably the least prejudiced person of all my group of friends. I felt I was the least prejudiced. I really did. And that's when Drake chimed in and he said, I'm so glad that you feel that way, but how do you feel about prejudiced people? And that's when I just went off. I hate, crazy prejudiced people. They're so, bleepity bleep. They're so bleepity bleep. I'm just going off. I really was going off about what prejudiced people are and how closed-minded they are. And as I was doing it, and it's funny because in my mind, I was seeing good people over here and prejudiced people over here, right? And Drake showed like a hand coming out and picking me up and carrying me over to the prejudice and putting me down with the prejudice. And he's like, do you see what you're doing? By hating prejudiced people, you are joining them. And that was huge. Like, what? That doesn't make sense, but it does make all the sense in the world. So I had to completely release my prejudice for prejudiced people. And so the hard part for me is he helped me understand with someone I knew, who I knew was very prejudiced, and I had been judging them for a long time as a prejudiced person. He helped me see their path and what led them to believe that they needed to be prejudiced, and that all it was a defense mechanism centered on insecurity, centered on victim nature, and that it didn't come from any type of place of love or security. And he also showed me that if I was to step into that person's life with unconditional love and unconditional security in that love, that prejudice would disappear in them, and that they would embrace all lifestyles, cultures, races, religions, all of them, right? So the answer to prejudice is not more prejudice. But that's what the world and the news has been teaching us ever since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And what they don't realize, they don't realize that the news has been grabbing your tail and saying this is the enemy, and they're having you attack your own tail. Like, no.
Well, it's like Brent and I, we went at it a little bit about this whole Israel-Palestinian, but then when I sat back and thought about it,
you realize
God loves the Palestinian baby as much as he loves the Israeli baby. You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's a great mentor, at least a great influencer for me is Einstein. And Einstein took 100 red ants and 100 black ants. He put them in an ant colony, and they completely coincided without any problem. They were even laying eggs in each other's dugouts. So you were getting complete cohesion between red ant and black ant. Now, Einstein wanted to do this so that he could see if they would crossbreed, if he could get some type of hybridization going on, but that wasn't happening. Well, one day, he decided, what's going to happen if I shake the ant farm? And so he took the ant farm and he just shook it around for a minute, put it back down, and within about 6 hours, every single black ant was dead. The red ants went through and executed and killed every single black ant in the colony, including the eggs.
Wow.
And the real question is not which one's more important, the red ant or black ant. The real question is who is shaking the damn ant farm? That's the question.
Yeah. That's also how the theme to the Pink Panther came around too, with dead ant. Sorry, bad joke. But anyway,
I think that's an old knock joke. That's an old knock joke.
I've got a two-part question for you. A two-part question for you.
You got it.
First, so being on life support for 3 days, what was your recovery? Like, I know you didn't just come to and then get up, walk out, high five the nurses, and say, "See you later." And second, when did you realize what was going on in your head actually happened? Like, it wasn't, because I'm going to guess you may have thought it was not real. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe you imagined it.
I thought it was a dream. I'll tell you exactly. So what happened was, I was in heaven, literally in heaven. And while I was in heaven, getting this hug from my guide, Drake, he gave me this amazing hug, this hug that could heal the universe. This single hug that he was giving me could heal the universe. And as he was giving me this hug, I then started to hear my brother in my ear, like as if he was speaking directly in my ear. He started to give my body a special blessing, a special prayer. And with that prayer, he like demanded that my body be made whole and that I return to my body, as if he knew my consciousness wasn't there, that it was off having fun in our real existence. And he demanded it get back in the cage, get back in this cage. And that's not the words he used, but that's what it felt like. I
You were too happy about
my
it.
brother said this. He said this blessing over me at about 10 p.m. at night, and I woke up at 1:11 in the morning. I woke up to a crazy headache, and I felt extremely claustrophobic. You know, in hindsight, I now understand why I was so claustrophobic. The energetic body of who we are, our soul, is about 40 to 50 feet tall. It's way bigger than we are here, way bigger. And so for it to be compacted back down, that's why we're usually babies when we come here first. And that's why we cry all the time, because it's a hard process to go from energetic body into these little physical bodies. And you know, mind you, I'm a bigger guy, but it still felt like I was a blue whale being, you know, carted off into a sardine can. But I woke up, I took off everything off of me. I couldn't even have the gown, the hospital gown touching me. I just stood there and I was just panting, you know, breathing deeply. And I reached over and unplugged all the equipment that was plugged in. I had IVs sticking out of me. I yanked them all out. I had a breathing tube in. I yanked it out. I had a catheter in. I yanked it out.
No.
Like everything. Yeah. I yanked everything off of me, and then I just stood there. And for about 90 seconds, I was just breathing deeply, and then I realized, oh, you're naked. And so I went rifling through the cupboard, and I found 2 gowns, and I like wrapped them around my midsection, and then I just felt this feeling like run. And so I ran. I knew exactly where the elevator was, it had to be one of these higher knowings, but I knew exactly where it was. I didn't even look both directions. I just started running straight for the elevator. I made it to the elevator. I was hitting the down button, and I was like hitting it again and again and again. And then I heard a scream back from my room. And then I heard a second scream. And it was these 2 nurses trying to figure out which body snatchers grabbed their body, you know? And then as they both came out of the room and looked down and saw me like hitting that elevator button, they screamed again. And I knew I was had at that point, that I had to go back. I knew that in a weird way, I knew they'd get in a lot of trouble if I snuck out of there, and they'd probably get arrested or whatever. So I went back and I told them I wanted to go home. I told them I was fine. They asked me all my vital data. They asked me what day it was. They asked me, you know, who was the president. They asked me all these questions for hours and hours. So for 6 hours, they asked me questions. Wow. And not just that, they did tests. They did a whole battery of tests. They did a couple of blood tests. They did a whole bunch of scans of my brain and my lungs, because the lungs were the big concern, because I had aspirated. They wanted to make sure that all the vomit had gotten sucked out of the lungs, or at least gotten dislodged so it could get cleared out of the lungs. So they did a whole battery of tests, and I passed all of them. And I left. I left on my own reconnaissance. I left at 7:30 in the morning. My dad came and picked me up. The only thing they wouldn't let me do is they wouldn't let me drive my own car, but I didn't even know where my car was. You know, I had died and been gone for 3 days, so I didn't even know where my car was. And so I called my dad, and he came and picked me up, and I was fine. I went jogging about an hour and a half later, just full on, just running. To me, that's what felt the best, because it felt like I could somehow energetically get out of this body, or feel like I was outside this body. And I was somewhat addicted to that energy of moving so fast, like we had moved when I was going towards heaven. I could feel just so much momentum of how fast we were moving, just eons and eons and millions of miles passing as we were, going through my journey. And at the end of all this, I did think I was delusional. I thought I was crazy. I had a neurologist that had convinced me. He warned me. He said, Vinney, you were dead for 3 days. Your brain was starved of oxygen for at least an hour, maybe 2. And I mean, he was like, on paper, you were dead for almost an hour on paper, and you were probably dead almost an hour before that. So he explained that my brain was going to use its imagination to fill in the gaps. And he said, be very leery. He explained it like a Dr. Seuss novel, that my brain may create this Dr. Seuss novel to fill in the gaps. And he said, just not to take it serious, to be very, very leery of whatever I remember.
Thanks for listening to 3 Dad Bods, and make sure to catch their past episodes on Spotify, Apple, and Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure and leave a comment to help stroke their fragile egos.